Welcome to my journal entry. We're going to take a dive into what I've learned and how I've learned this semester. And we are going to start right now. At the beginning of the semester, I wondered if I was going to be learning new topics or if it was sort of a rehash of the things that I had previously learned. And also, my goal was to learn a few topics before we were assigned to groups. My hope was that I would be well prepared for my group and be an asset. However, the goal to learn before we began teaching each other didn't go quite as planned. My next goal was to learn two topics a week during the 8 weeks we had as a group. However, that also became a challenge. Nevertheless, I somehow managed to pull something together for our group meetings and shared links or tutorials that I found helpful. My plan was to tackle each topic in the suggested order because I was trying to lay a foundation so that new topics would make sense to me. But there were times that I didn't stick to my personal plan because I wanted to make sure that I was in sync with the group. One of the first topics I focused on was MVC on the model view controller architecture. No, not MVP, but MVC. I didn't spend too much time on it because I felt that I still remembered the gist of it well enough from the previous Java class that I had taken. However, that's not to say that I remember the class well, which was obvious because I ended up doing a lot of reviewing. Nevertheless, the MVC pattern made a lot of sense to me because it helped to separate the code, which enabled it to be more easily reusable and made changes to the code easier to do. Now, as for Hibernate, it is not the same thing as sleeping. I learned Hibernate so that I could teach it to my group. And while I didn't have the best understanding at the time I taught it, I returned to it and was able to get a better grasp of it through tutorials. I found that reading about a topic first through further Tuckett's links and research that I found, it helped me understand the tutorials better. The one thing I was very careful about with Hibernate was doing the setup correctly because I knew that if I didn't have my database connected properly or if that I didn't install Apache correctly, I would be incredibly frustrated. But fortunately, I was able to set up the JDBC and Apache correctly so that I didn't have any issues. And I was so happy that it was successful. And I made sure to post the tutorial links in our community to help my group members if they needed it. When I taught HTTP URL connection, I felt as though I had done a disservice to my group members. I really felt as though I didn't know what I was talking about. It was sort of a new subject to me, but not really because I had done something similar in another class. So it was kind of familiar and it made sense. Nevertheless, as I contemplated the workings of dynamic web apps, the HTTP UPRL connection makes a lot more sense. And it's interesting and kind of cool that I have a bit of a grasp on the behind the scenes workings or the back end of an app. Now, JSON and Java were topics that we were asked to deal with, and that happens to be a picture of my daughter Delaney or Daney, and I've nicknamed her Jason Jr. because she and my husband have a lot of similarities. But JSON, the topic, wasn't too difficult to work with because I had experience with it in building an app, but while using it with JavaScript, it was a little bit of a challenge to make it work with Java, but I learned. And as for Java collections, I believe Cody tackled that for us, and he gave us some really good examples. I'm really glad that Brother Tuckett limited Java collections to 5 classes because there were quite a few. And it was interesting to see how a list is not an array, and I was pretty amazed at how collections can do so much more than a regular array. It can sort automatically, add, delete to the head and or tail of the queue, and it can also add, delete to the head and tail of the queue at the same time. There are a lot more options with collections than with a regular array. Let's see, we've got threads, runners, executors, JUnits, and circuits. Nope, not runners, but what I really meant was runnable. And threads, not like the threads that we use, and not an executioner, but actual executors. So these uh, pictures are kind of cheesy, but I was trying to figure out what could relate to these in some way. Usually, for me, I took about 7 hours, actually more than 7 hours on just one topic. So I was surprised when there were a few that didn't take me as long. And so threads, runners, executors, JUnits, and servlets were those topics that took me less time to learn and understand. I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to tackle threads, executors, and runnables and JUnits in one day. In fact, I was beyond thrilled because that meant that I could work on something else that much sooner. And I was pretty much taken aback at how easy it was to write JUnit or certs. And so I really enjoyed writing code about executors, threads, and runnables. And those topics made a lot of sense to me. And I believe that it had everything to do with the fact that it was explained in terms that I understood. Um, JUnits, sorry, servlets I've included in that group of topics because it also took less than 7 hours to learn. And I had a lot of fun with those topics, especially servlets. I had some code that linked the HTML page to the JSP page, and then the JSP page linked to the server page, and the server page went back to the HTML page. And I really liked that topic because it worked well, and I didn't have to wonder why the code didn't work. And while some of those topics were easy for me to understand, there were others that were really difficult, and it felt like I was wearing a hard hat to get through application controller patterns and system level tests. Um, I even revisited ACP a few times over the semester because it was so tricky for me. And I think it was Andy who taught this subject the first week we met, and his PowerPoint was very helpful. In fact, I revisited his PowerPoint to get a better grasp of ACP. During my second visit to ACP, I had a better grasp of it. In fact, I played around with code that ran, but I wanted to make some changes to it. So I let it alone for a few weeks, but that was actually a little bit too long to leave it alone. And on my third revisit to the subject, I couldn't quite remember what I had learned or written, which is a reminder why adding comments to the code is a really good idea. System level tests were also tricky for me. They proved to be a challenge. I spent so much time trying to figure this one out. I got awesome feedback and guidance from my group, but actually running the test stumped me because I couldn't figure out how to actually make the tests work. I tried to use JMeter, but that was so tricky and so difficult for me to figure out that I finally left it alone and decided to try I think it's Webload, which seems to be a lot more user friendly. And I didn't have an issue actually writing out the test, but in trying to figure out how to use the actual test or the software to run it. But then that's just me unintentionally making what should be easy complicated. Fortunately, however, uh, the diagrams weren't so complicated, and I enjoyed revisiting or refreshing my understanding of the use case state and sequence diagrams and use case documents. Each of those provides a unique look into the behavior, states, and functionality of a program, and they're helpful to the process. I know that they're an important part of planning, and my view on the diagrams is that if they can help the developer make a good plan, which can then help the shareholder see why the system, program, or app is necessary. While I didn't create an app for this class, I was able to follow a tutorial to build a simple JSF app. And it's simple, but while it's simple, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I can only imagine the amount of work involved in creating bigger and more complicated apps. Um, Regardless, I enjoy the process and look forward to actually building an app and getting that to work. Um, Fortunately for me, even though I had some uh, interesting obstacles along the way, and this was a difficult semester for me, I had a really great group. I am so appreciative of my teammates for their support and their helpfulness. We made an effort to get to our meetings posted in our community, chatted on Google throughout the week when we had questions. And we might have only met once a week, but we had lots of discussions through our Hangout chats, and through posting in our group by sharing links and tutorials. For me, this was a really challenging semester, and part of it was because I was just so done with school. You can see I had a seriously bad kids and senioritis, but part of that attitude stems from what seems to be so much going on in my personal life, but then, who doesn't have a lot going on in their personal life? In regards to metacognition, I think the most important thing I learned was not to give up, but to keep moving forward, even when I didn't want to. For me, the goal was so close, and yet being the closest to graduation as I've been, it seemed the farthest away. I had to remind myself often that I would be sorely disappointed if I gave up when I was only 3 classes from graduating this semester. There's always next semester, but in my case, why? All this directed my thoughts to keeping covenants and holding on to them to the very end. I am not ashamed to say that I've done a lot of praying in the last few weeks, including this week and even today, because I know I need all the divine help I can get to boost my efforts. I can only imagine that while I'm still alive, I'll be doing a lot of praying as we get nearer to the Savior's second coming. So in the end, I did learn a lot about Java, and new information on, you know, coding with Java, with all the different topics that we coded this year. But ultimately, what I really got out of this class was the importance of working together as a group and doing whatever we could to maintain contact throughout the semester, even though we only met once a week. And then in over my overall learning, what I really got out was how important it is to endure to the end, or to just keep going, to just keep moving forward and putting in some kind of effort and keeping the goal in sight and working towards it. So, anyway, that's what I got out of this class, and that's my journal entry, and I hope that works. And thank you, Brother Tuckett, for all the effort that you put into this class, for putting together the videos and giving us feedback. It was really helpful. Thank you very much.